Welcome back to Major Antonio's presentation of London to Ladysmith via Pretoria by Winston S. Churchill. Today, 125 years ago, the future Prime Minister reported from the fronts of the Boer War in South Africa. We shall follow his footsteps as he narrates his adventures himself. Subscribe to our channel so as not to miss anything. Chapter 19, A Fresh Effort and an Army Chaplain. Spearman's Hill, February 4, 1900.
The first gleams of daylight crept underneath the wagon, and the sleepers, closely packed for shelter from the rain showers, awoke. Those who live under the conditions of a civilized city, who lie abed till 9 and 10 of the clock in artificially darkened rooms, gain luxury at the expense of joy. But the soldier, who fares simply, sleeps soundly, and rises with the morning star, wakes in an elation of body and spirit without an effort and with scarcely a yawn. There is no more delicious moment in the day than this, when we light the fire, and while the kettle boils, watch the dark shadows of the hills take form, perspective, and finally color, knowing that there is another whole day begun, bright with chance and interest, and free from all cares. All cares, for who can be worried about the little matters of humdrum life when he may be dead before the night? Such a one was with us yesterday. See, there is a spare mug for coffee in the mess, but now gone forever. And so it may be with us tomorrow. What does it matter that this or that is misunderstood or perverted, that so-and-so is envious and spiteful, that heavy difficulties obstruct the larger schemes of life, clogging nimble aspiration with the mud of matters of fact? Here life itself, life at its best and healthiest, awaits the caprice of the bullet. Let us see the development of the day. All else may stand over, perhaps forever. Existence is never so sweet as when it is at hazard. The bright butterfly flutters in the sunshine, the expression of the philosophy of Omar Khayyam, without the potations. But we awoke on the morning of the 25th in most gloomy spirits. I had seen the evacuation of Spion Kop during the night, and I did not doubt that it would be followed by the abandonment of all efforts to turn the Boer left from the passages of the Tugela at and near Trichart's Drift. Nor were these forebodings wrong. Before the sun was fairly risen, orders arrived, all baggage to move east of Venter's Spruit immediately, troops to be ready to turn out at 30 minutes' notice. General retreat, that was their meaning. Buller was withdrawing his train as a preliminary to disengaging, if he could, the fighting brigades and retiring across the river. Buller. So it was no longer Warren. The commander-in-chief had arrived, in the hour of misfortune, to take all responsibility for what had befallen the army, to extricate it, if possible, from its position of peril, to encourage the soldiers, now a second time defeated without being beaten, to bear the disappointment. Everyone knows how all this, that looked so difficult, was successfully accomplished. The army was irritated by the feeling that it had made sacrifices for nothing. It was puzzled and disappointed by failure, which it did not admit nor understand. The enemy were flushed with success. The opposing lines in many places were scarcely 1,000 yards apart. As the infantry retired, the enemy would have commanding ground from which to assail them at every point. Behind flowed the Tugela, a deep, rapid, only occasionally fordable river, 85 yards broad, with precipitous banks. We all prepared ourselves for a bloody and even disastrous rearguard action. But now, I repeat, when things had come to this pass, Buller took personal command. He arrived on the field calm, cheerful, inscrutable as ever, rode hither and thither with a weary staff and a huge notebook, gripped the whole business in his strong hands, and so shook it into shape that we crossed the river in safety, comfort, and good order, with most remarkable mechanical precision, and without the loss of a single man or a pound of stores. The fighting troops stood fast for 2 days, while the train of wagons streamed back over the bridges and parked in huge black squares on the southern bank. Then, on the night of the 26th, the retreat began. It was pitch dark, and a driving rain veiled all lights. The ground was broken, the enemy near. It is scarcely possible to imagine a more difficult operation, but it was performed with amazing ease. Buller himself, not Buller by proxy or Buller at the end of a heliograph, Buller himself managed it. He was the man who gave orders, the man whom the soldiers looked to. He had already transported his train. At dusk, he passed the royals over the ford. By 10 o'clock, all his cavalry and guns were across the pontoon bridges. At 10, he began disengaging his infantry, and by daylight the army stood in order on the southern bank. While the sappers began to take the pontoon bridges to pieces, the Boers, who must have been astonished by the unusual rapidity of the movement, fired their first shell at the crossing. We were over the river none too soon. A successful retreat is a poor thing for a relieving army to boast of when their gallant friends are hard-pressed and worn out. But this withdrawal showed that this force possesses both a leader and machinery of organization, and it is this, and this alone, that has preserved our confidence. We believe that Buller gauged the capacity of one subordinate at Colenso, of another at Spion Kop, and that now he will do things himself, as he was meant to do. I know not why he has waited so long. Probably some pedantic principle of military etiquette. Commander-in-chief should occupy a central position. Turning movements should be directed by subordinates. But the army believes that this is all over now, and that for the future, Buller will trust no one but himself in great matters. And it is because they believe this that the soldiers are looking forward with confidence and eagerness to the third and last attempt, for the sands at Ladysmith have run down very low to shatter the Boer lines. We have waited a week in the camp behind Spearman's Hill. The general has addressed the troops himself. He has promised that we shall be in Ladysmith soon. To replace the 1,600 killed and wounded in the late actions, drafts of 2,400 men have arrived. A mountain battery, a battery RHA, and 2 great fortress guns have strengthened the artillery. 2 squadrons of the 14th Hussars have been added to the cavalry, so that we are actually today numerically stronger by more than 1,000 men than when we fought at Spion Kop, while the Boers are at least 500 weaker. Attrition versus recuperation. Everyone has been well fed, reinforced, and inspirited, and all are prepared for a supreme effort, in which we shall either reach Ladysmith or be flung back truly beaten with a loss of 6,000 or 7,000 men. I will not try to foreshadow the line of attack, though certain movements appear to indicate where it will be directed. But it is generally believed that we fight tomorrow at dawn, and as I write this letter, 70 guns are drawing up in line on the hills to open the preparatory bombardment. It is a solemn Sunday, and the camp, with its white tents looking snug and peaceful in the sunlight, holds its breath that the beating of its heart may not be heard. On such a day as this, the services of religion would appeal with passionate force to thousands. I attended a church parade this morning. What a chance this was for a man of great soul who feared God. On every side were drawn up deep masses of soldiery, rank behind rank, perhaps in all 5,000. In the hollow square stood the general, the man on whom everything depended. All around were men who within the week had been face to face with death, and were going to face him again in a few hours. Life seemed very precarious, in spite of the sunlit landscape. What was it all for? What was the good of human effort? How should it befall a man who died in a quarrel he did not understand? All the anxious questionings of weak spirits. It was one of those occasions when a fine preacher might have given comfort and strength where both were sorely needed, and have printed on many minds a permanent impression. The bridegroom opportunity had come, but the church had her lamp untrimmed. A chaplain, with a raucous voice, discoursed on the details of the siege and surrender of Jericho. The soldiers froze into apathy, and after a while, the formal perfunctory service reached its welcome conclusion. As I marched home, an officer said to me, "Why is it, when the church spends so much on missionary work among heathens, she does not take the trouble to send good men to preach in time of war?" The medical profession is represented by some of its greatest exponents. Why are men's wounded souls left to the care of a village practitioner? Nor could I answer, but I remembered the venerable figure and noble character of Father Brindle in the River War, and wondered whether Rome was again seizing the opportunity which Canterbury disdained. The opportunity of telling the glad tidings to soldiers about to die.
This concludes today's reading of London to Ladysmith via Pretoria, by Winston S. Churchill. Join us also on February 9th for the subsequent chapter. Subscribe to Major Antonio's channel. Thanks for listening, and so long.